Most people spend their entire lives working for money, yet they never stop to ask why the money they earn is constantly slipping through their fingers like sand. We are conditioned by a poor dad psychology that prizes job security and a steady paycheck, effectively training our brains to be high-level servants in a system designed to keep us running on a treadmill of debt and consumerism. You are likely trapped in a cognitive loop where you trade your most precious asset, your time, for a liability that you've been tricked into calling an asset. The promise of this psychological revolution is the total destruction of the rat race mentality. By shifting your focus from earned income to passive cash flow, you can rewire your brain to see opportunities where others see obstacles, allowing you to achieve a level of wealth and autonomy that most assume is impossible. This fundamental shift from financial illiteracy to economic mastery is the core legacy of Robert T. Kiyosaki's groundbreaking classic, Rich Dad, Poor Dad. It is not a book about accounting. It is a psychological manual for breaking the chains of the working class and finally learning how to make money work for you rather than spending your life working for it. To understand the rat race, you must first confront the two most powerful architects of human behavior: fear and greed. Most of us believe we are in control of our financial lives, but in reality, we are being piloted by an ancient, survival-driven limbic system that reacts to money the same way it reacts to a predator in the wild. The psychological foundation of the rat race is built on the fear of not having enough. This fear wakes you up in the morning, pushes you out the door, and forces you into a workplace that often drains your spirit. You tell yourself that the answer to this fear is a paycheck, but the moment the money hits your account, a second emotion takes over: greed, or more accurately, desire. You begin to imagine the things that money can buy: the social status of a new car, the fleeting joy of a luxury vacation, or the temporary safety of a bigger home. This cycle is a cognitive loop that Robert Kiyosaki identifies as the primary obstacle to wealth. The fear of being without money drives you to work hard, and once you have the money, the desire for the next thing drives you to spend it, because your spending increases alongside your income. The fear of losing that lifestyle becomes even greater, forcing you to work even harder. You are effectively running on a psychological treadmill that never moves forward, no matter how fast you go. The poor dad mindset is a symptom of this loop. It prizes the illusion of job security because the brain interprets a steady paycheck as a shield against the unknown. However, this security is a mirage. By relying on a single source of earned income, you are actually more vulnerable to the whims of the market and the decisions of an employer. Yet the mind clings to it because it is the only path it has been taught to navigate. Breaking this cycle requires a radical shift in your emotional intelligence. You have to learn to observe your emotions rather than react to them. When the fear of being broke hits, the average person reacts by looking for a job or a raise. The rich dad mindset, however, uses that fear to think. It asks, is a job the best long-term solution to this fear? Most people don't have the psychological stamina to sit with that discomfort, so they choose the quick fix of a paycheck, which only fuels the cycle further. This is where financial IQ begins, at the intersection of self-awareness and logic. You must realize that most people are not actually working for money. They are working to quiet the voices of their own insecurities. The rat race is also a social psychological phenomenon. We are tribal creatures, and the desire to keep up is a deeply embedded drive to maintain our rank within the hierarchy. We buy things we don't need to impress people we don't even like, because our primitive brain tells us that being less than our peers is a threat to our survival. This is the greedy part of the cycle that is fueled by marketing and social comparison. We become slaves to our own possessions, needing more and more life energy to maintain the things we've bought, which in turn makes us more dependent on the very jobs that cause us stress. To escape, you must stop being a servant to your paycheck and start becoming a master of your mind. This involves a painful but necessary deconstruction of everything you were taught about success. High grades, a prestigious degree, and a good job are the traditional rungs of the ladder within the rat race. While they aren't inherently bad, they often act as blinders that prevent you from seeing the exit door. The rich don't work for money because they realize that money earned through labor is the most heavily taxed and least scalable form of wealth. Instead, they focus on building assets that generate income independently of their time. This is not just a financial strategy. It is a psychological revolution. It is the moment you decide that your time is too precious to be spent in a state of perpetual reaction, and you finally step off the wheel to build a life dictated by choice, rather than by the twin masters of fear and greed. The psychological liberation found in minding your own business begins with a radical deconstruction of your professional identity. For most of our lives, we are socially conditioned to confuse our profession with our business. When you ask someone what they do, they usually respond with their job title. I am a banker, I am a teacher, or I am an engineer. This is a profound cognitive error. Your profession is the labor you perform to generate income, but your business is your asset column. Most people spend their entire lives working in someone else's business, making the owners and the shareholders rich while neglecting their own. This creates a psychological state of dependency, where your survival is tethered to a corporate entity that views you as an expense, rather than an investment. To mind your own business is to realize that you are the CEO of your own financial life, and your primary responsibility is the acquisition and protection of income-producing assets. This shift requires overcoming the employee archetype, the deeply embedded belief that a paycheck is the only path to safety. We are raised in an educational system designed to produce high-level employees, people who are excellent at following instructions but terrified of individual economic autonomy. When you start minding your own business, you begin to treat every dollar as an employee of your own. Instead of seeing a dollar as something to be spent, you see it as a seed that can be planted in your asset column to grow into a future of freedom. This is the transition from active income to passive income. Active income is linear. It requires your physical presence and life energy. Passive income is exponential. It is the money your money makes while you are doing something else. Psychologically, this moves you from a state of trading hours for dollars to a state of owning systems. One of the greatest psychological hurdles in this chapter is the concept of minding versus ignoring. Many people believe that because they have a 401k or a savings account, they are taking care of their business. But the Rich Dad philosophy demands active, high-level engagement. It requires you to educate yourself on the language of money, accounting, investing, and market trends. If you do not understand your own financial statements, you are essentially flying a plane without a cockpit display. The fear of numbers is a common psychological block, often rooted in childhood academic trauma. But in the world of wealth, financial literacy is the only true form of protection. You must stop being a victim of financial fog and start looking at your assets with the cool, detached precision of a surgeon. Minding your own business also acts as a psychological buffer against the hedonic treadmill. When you are focused on building your asset column, your dopamine hits stop coming from the purchase of luxury goods and start coming from the growth of your net worth. You find more satisfaction in owning 10 shares of a profitable company or a piece of rental real estate than you do in wearing a designer watch. This is because assets provide something that consumer goods never can: a sense of existential security and future possibility. You are building a fortress of autonomy that eventually allows you to say no to situations, bosses, or lifestyles that do not serve your soul. You realize that true wealth is not the ability to buy things, but the ability to own your own time. Furthermore, this chapter highlights the psychological importance of paying yourself first. Most people pay their rent, their taxes, and their groceries and then try to build their business with whatever is left. The rich flip this script. They invest in their assets first, even when they are short on cash. This creates a healthy financial pressure that forces the brain to become creative and find new ways to generate income. It is a psychological exercise in self-prioritization. By minding your own business first, you are telling your subconscious that your freedom is the highest priority. Over time, this builds a momentum that is impossible to stop. You stop seeing yourself as a cog in someone else's machine and start seeing yourself as the architect of a private empire. The transition is complete when your assets generate enough cash flow to cover your expenses. At that point, you are no longer working because you have to, but because you choose to. You have successfully reclaimed your business from the world. The strategic advantage of the rich is not found in the size of their bank accounts, but in the structural complexity of their psychological and legal frameworks. To understand this chapter, you must confront the fairness illusion, the belief held by the middle class, that the economic system is a level playing field governed by a single set of rules. In reality, the world operates under a dual-track legal system, one for those who sell their time, and one for those who own the entities that employ them. The rich dad mindset recognizes that the greatest threat to wealth is not the market, but the invisible tax of financial ignorance. By mastering what Robert Kiyosaki calls the financial IQ, you move from being a victim of the system to becoming a strategic architect of your own protection. This IQ is a synthesis of technical skills, accounting, the ability to read numbers, investing, the science of making money, understanding markets, the supply and demand of human emotion, and the law. At the core of this psychological shift is the concept of the corporation. Most people view a corporation as a building or a group of people, but the rich view it as a legal vehicle, a box designed to shield their wealth from the two greatest predators, taxes and lawsuits. The psychological difference in how income is handled within this box is staggering. The average employee is caught in a cycle of earn, tax, spend. They work hard. The government takes its portion before they ever see it, and they try to survive on what is left. This creates a psychological state of scarcity, where the individual feels constantly squeezed by rising costs and stagnant wages. The rich, however, utilize the corporation to operate in a cycle of earn, spend, tax. They use their income to pay for legitimate business expenses, travel, education, equipment, and benefits using pre-tax dollars. Only after these expenses are covered do they pay taxes on the remaining profit. This is not merely a financial trick. It is a fundamental shift in the power dynamic between the individual and the state. By understanding the rules of the game, the rich are able to retain a much larger portion of their life energy, which they then reinvest into their asset column. This creates an exponential growth curve that the linear mind of the employee can never hope to match. It is the psychological realization that you don't need to work harder if you learn how to keep more of what you already make. Furthermore, this chapter highlights the importance of the legal shield. We live in an increasingly litigious society where those who appear wealthy are often targeted. The middle class, in their desire to show off their success, often hold their assets in their own names, making them easy targets for lawsuits. The rich understand the psychology of owning nothing, but controlling everything. By holding assets in trusts and corporations, they protect their wealth from being seized. This provides a level of psychological peace that allows for more aggressive and creative investing. When you aren't constantly worried about losing what you've built, your brain is free to focus on expansion rather than just survival. To master this strategic advantage, you must overcome the good student syndrome, the belief that following the rules, as they were taught in school, will lead to success. The educational system is designed to produce employees who pay the highest taxes and have the least legal protection. Breaking free requires a form of intellectual rebellion. You must become a student of the tax code and corporate law, not because you want to be an accountant or a lawyer, but because you want to be free. The rich dad mindset treats the financial system as a puzzle to be solved, rather than a burden to be endured. You begin to see every tax law not as a restriction, but as a map showing you where the government wants you to invest your money. Ultimately, the strategic advantage of the rich is rooted in the power of association. The rich surround themselves with people who are smarter than they are, tax experts, attorneys, and seasoned investors, while the poor dad mindset feels threatened by those with more knowledge. The rich dad mindset views them as essential components of their financial team. This is a move away from the lone wolf psychology of the self-employed specialist and toward the synergy of a business owner. You realize that your financial IQ is the sum of the people you have access to. By leveraging the expertise of others, you can navigate complex markets and legal landscapes with confidence. This strategic alignment ensures that your assets are not only growing, but are also fortified against the erosion of taxes and inflation, allowing you to build a legacy that outlasts your own life energy. You are no longer just a worker in the economy. You have become a sovereign entity within it,